You haven't just arrived here to watch a video, you've come to feel a shift in the very core of who you are. Because what we are about to uncover doesn't live in the world of simple ideas, but in the hidden chambers of your spirit, where your deepest battles are fought, where pain isn't a wall, but a doorway. I'm speaking to you directly, as if you were right here with me. Each of you holds inside a silent story of survival, the private ache of having shouldered someone else's weight, the profound change that happens when a deeply feeling person has navigated the maze of a toxic relationship and come out the other side, still breathing. So many believe that making it through is the final chapter, but survival is merely the starting point for what comes after you've been exposed to a poison. After you've been emptied by another's bottomless need, you are not just a shattered person, but the potential for a new shape, a new kind of strength rising from the ruins. And so the crucial question we must confront is this: who do you become after this profound journey, after this trial of your very soul? To start, we must recognize what it truly means to be an empath in the deepest sense. Not just someone who feels deeply, not just a person with thin emotional boundaries, but someone who has been selected by the unconscious mind to act as a container for what others cannot face. The empath often grows in an environment of emotional instability. From childhood, they learn to read the feelings of their family, to sense the energy of the home, to detect the unspoken fears that fill the room. Their sensitivity is a way to cope, a method to manage chaos by becoming the surface that shows others what they refuse to see. And so when the toxic individual enters their world, it is no coincidence. It is the magnetic pull of opposites, drawing each other into a dance as ancient as humanity itself. The narcissist is the living example of a denied shadow self, the false front that must feed on others to keep its fragile sense of grandeur intact. And the empath, by their very nature, becomes the one who contains, who soaks up, who ingests what the toxic person will not acknowledge. But here is the great test. To take in that darkness is a monumental task. It is to allow into your own system a toxin that was never yours to carry. It is to feel a guilt that was placed upon you, a shame that did not originate with you, an anger that was implanted in your heart like a foreign object. This process can feel like dying. The empath might lose all sense of self, lost in a fog, doubting their own mind, trapped in a funhouse of distorted reflections where the narcissist claims that their truth is the only reality. But I tell you, in that very falling apart, in that very shattering, something essential begins to stir. It is a voyage of the wounded healer, a symbolic journey into the depths, the breaking down of the ego, so that the spirit can awaken to its true purpose. When you endure such an experience, you are not the same person. The empath who survives the narcissist is not the empath who first walked into the maze. A death has occurred, and a rebirth has followed. You have carried the shadow of another. You have struggled with the venom. And if you have not been completely destroyed, then you have been changed. The unconscious mind that orchestrated this test has also planted within you the seed of a great transformation. For what is survival if not a kind of magic? The heaviness of suffering, the fluidity of confusion, the heat of rage, all combined within the container of your being until something new is born, something precious. And so we ask again, who do you become? You become the one who understands darkness not as a concept, but from the inside. You become the one who no longer fears the void because you have lived within it. You become the one whose kindness is no longer ignorant, whose inner light is no longer undefended, but whose essence carries the weight of one who has walked among predators and returned with vision that sees past the surface. Your scars are the map of a journey you survived. I want to show this with a vision. Picture a person dreaming they are in a magnificent hall. The tables are laden with food, silver cups overflowing with drink. But when she sits to eat, the food turns to dust on her tongue and the drink becomes bitter. She looks around and sees that every other person wears a fixed, smiling mask. But behind those masks are empty eyes and gnashing teeth. Suddenly she realizes she, too, is wearing a mask. She tears it away and cries out. But when she sees her reflection in a cup, she finds her face has become luminous, marked, but glowing with a new light. She wakes up shaking, knowing she has seen a terrible and magnificent truth. This dream is the psyche's way of showing what it means to survive the feast of the narcissist, to consume the dust of lives, to know the sharp taste of control, to cast off the disguise and discover that the face beneath, though marked, shines with a realness that cannot be copied. This change is not free. Let no one tell you that escaping the grasp of the narcissist leaves you without marks. There are injuries, and those injuries will throb. You might carry a heightened alertness, a difficulty trusting, the faint whisper of the narcissist's words that speaks in the back of your thoughts. But those wounds are also markings, symbols etched into your core. They tell you that you have undergone a rite of passage. For survival is not the escape from hurt. It is the capacity to hold that hurt until its purpose starts to appear. The empath who has survived becomes a holder of insight, a carrier of hard-won wisdom. You are no longer just receptive. You are knowledgeable. You recognize the odor of deceit. You know the flavor of artificial affection. You can detect manipulation in the atmosphere like a change in pressure long before the storm arrives. And this is a significant power, even if it was earned through hardship. You might wonder, why does it have to be like this? Why must the empath go through the narcissist's darkness to awaken? I say because the unconscious requires equilibrium. The narcissist cannot hold their own shadow. They cast it out, and it must find a home. The empath, conditioned from youth to carry what isn't theirs, becomes that home. But the unconscious does not abandon them there. It brings them to a point of rupture, to a critical juncture where the toxin can no longer be borne. And at that instant, when everything falls apart, when your very identity seems broken, the psyche gets the opportunity to rebuild itself on a firmer foundation. This is the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you are meant to be, not who others required you to be. It is a dangerous path, for many do not make it through whole. But those who do emerge with a lucidity and power unfamiliar to those who have never faced such depths. There's a stage in the alchemical process known as the blackening. It is the phase where all is dissolved, where matter decays, where the light vanishes. But it is exactly in this decay that the possibility of change is planted. The empath who has taken in the narcissist's shadow enters their own blackening. They feel ruined, without value, hollowed out. But if they persist, if they reject the false reality, then from that dark earth a new flower starts to grow. And so who does the empath become? They become the magician of their own pain. They become the one who holds not only compassion but also sharp judgment. They become the one who no longer offers their spirit without thought, for they understand the price of such a gift. They become, strangely, more complete. Now listen closely, for I need to talk about the risk that stays. The empath, after surviving, might be drawn to wall off their heart completely, to shut down, to vow, I will never feel again. Never again will I care. Never again will I be vulnerable. This is a natural reaction. It is the psyche's method of guarding itself after catastrophe. But if this turns permanent, then the transformation is unfinished. To heal is not to turn to rock. It is to turn to something more valuable. To become rock is just another form of protection, another facade. And in time, the unconscious will rip it down. True survival means to become open again, but this time, not as a sheep before a wolf, but as a being who knows its own power. You will still feel profoundly, but you will no longer be swallowed by those feelings. You will still love, but you will not mistake love for self-erasure. You will still glow, but your glow will not be for those who come only to dim it. This is the paradox of the empath who has survived. Your heart expands, but it is also more defined. You are both soft and strong. Think again of the archetype of the wounded healer, the one who has been hurt in body or soul and through that injury becomes able to help others heal. This does not mean you will look for narcissists to fix them. That is the old cycle, the snare of constant self-sacrifice. No, the healed empath heals just by existing, by representing truth, by carrying a light that is no longer gullible. You become a reflection in which others see their own potential. You may guide, you may soothe, you may share knowledge, but you will not permit yourself to be consumed. In this way, the narcissist has, paradoxically, aided your becoming. Their shadow pushed you into the abyss where you found your actual strength. It is a harsh lesson, but a lesson all the same. And so I tell you, if you have absorbed the narcissist's shadow and survived, you are no longer just an empath. You are something more. You are one who has faced an end and been remade, one who has carried another's darkness and returned from the edge, one who has looked behind the disguise and refused to wear one yourself. You are not labeled by what was done to you. You are labeled by what you have turned into because of it. And what you have turned into is nothing less than a spirit awakened to its own symbolic power. When we talk of becoming after survival, we must also talk of bringing all the parts together. For it is not enough to leave the maze. One must bring out the prize concealed within it. The empath who survives the narcissist stands at a turning point. Either they ignore what occurred, hiding it deep in their unconscious where it breeds, or they meet it with bravery, letting it mold them into something larger. Integration demands a confrontation with the shadow, not only the narcissist's shadow, but your own. For what was it in you that let the narcissist in, to nourish themselves, to stay? Was it a desire for love? Was it a terror of being alone? Was it the hidden need to feel necessary, to be the redeemer? These things must be recognized, for if they are ignored, the pattern will happen again. This is not about blame, but about awareness. To bring these drives into consciousness is not to criticize yourself, but to free yourself. You see, the empath's biggest threat is not only the narcissist outside, but the unconscious narcissist inside, the part that feeds on self-sacrifice because it gives a feeling of purpose, the part that desires to be selected even at the expense of the self. When this is observed, when it is confessed, then the change is total. For you no longer act as an unknowing player in the story, but as an aware participant who makes different choices. Remember the tale of Persephone, taken to the underworld by its ruler. She eats the seeds of the pomegranate, and therefore she cannot go back to the world above unchanged. She belongs partly to the dark domain, partly to the light. So it is with the empath who has tasted the narcissist's offering. You can never go back to not knowing. And that is not a defeat, but a holy right. You will always carry with you the recollection of the depths, the understanding of control, the memory of dust on your tongue. But this does not mean you are chained to sadness. On the other hand, like Persephone, you become a bridge between realms. You can go into the darkness of another without losing your way. And you can rise into the light with more substance. You are no longer ignorant about the nature of harm, but neither are you defined by it. This balance is the sign of growth, the evidence of individuation. Let me offer you another picture. Imagine a person dreaming. He's walking through a thick wood at night. He hears sounds murmuring in the trees, blaming him, taunting him, luring him further into doubt. Suddenly he falls into an open space, and there in the middle is a mirror standing alone. He goes near and sees his image, but the reflection is bound in chains. He touches the glass and the chains melt away, but the reflection's gaze blazes with intensity. He wakes with a racing heart, knowing he has met a part of himself he never wanted to confront. This dream, like the experience of surviving the narcissist, shows the need of facing both imprisonment and liberation, both frailty and might. The empath, who has been tied by chains of blame and insecurity, finds in the act of survival the chance for fire in their own gaze, a power that was concealed under the surface. The mirror reveals both captivity and release. Which will you decide to live as? Now, we must stop here and think about what it means to hold darkness without being consumed by it. The narcissist's toxin does not just disappear when the connection is over. It remains like a smell in a room. There may be times when you hear their tone repeating in your head, criticizing you, minimizing you, claiming that you are always insufficient. These echoes are not a mark of defeat. They are the leftovers of swallowed projections. The mission is not to mute them by struggle, but to face them with the certainty of your own enlightened self. When the echo says, "You are without value," you reply, "I have endured. Therefore, I am greater than you ever believed." When the echo says, "You will never be cherished," you reply, "I have discovered how to cherish myself. Therefore, I no longer crave your false attention." This internal conversation is the next step of individuation. You are taking back the land of your soul step by step, thought by thought, until the inner world no longer belongs to the phantom of the narcissist, but to you. Do not be misled, however, into thinking this journey is fast. The unconscious does not move at the speed of the ego's urgency. Healing arrives in cycles, sometimes softly, sometimes like a gale that pulls you back into anguish just when you believed you were liberated. But even in those gales, recall you are not who you were. You may feel the ancient ache, but you are no longer the same container. You have been broken. And through those breaks, understanding has entered. You are more knowledgeable now, more perceptive, less ready to give up yourself for the sake of another's falsehoods. And this, I say once more, is a significant triumph. For the narcissist exists only where falsehoods are upheld. The moment you deny the falsehood, their influence over you shatters. You become unreachable, not because you cannot be heard, but because you are aware. What then is the fate of the empath who has survived? It is not just to exist free of narcissists. That is too limited an ambition. Your fate is to become a bringer of light tempered in shadow, to represent a profundity of care that does not mistake itself for victimhood, to move among people as a living example that pain, when embraced, can become renewal. You are a symbol, moving among symbols. Others who are still caught will notice something in you, though they may not comprehend it. They will sense your essence as both solace and provocation. Solace because you grasp their struggle without condemnation. Provocation because your very existence reveals their deceptions. This is the contradictory purpose of the survivor, to hold within you both healing and truth, to mend and to separate, to show the reality simply by being as one who has witnessed and endured. Let us think about the symbol of the phoenix being born from its own ashes. This picture has become so usual that its strength risks being forgotten. Yet, if you reflect on it seriously, you see that it is no simple comparison. The empath's former self truly is consumed in the flames of the narcissist's shadow. What is turned to ash is the identity that once thought love must always mean yielding without end, that once mixed up empathy with self-negation. From those ashes rises a being who knows their value, who carries flame in their essence, who can soar above manipulation instead of sinking below it. But unlike the legendary phoenix, this rebirth is not alone. It holds within it a purpose. You are reborn not only for your own sake, but for the whole. The unconscious of mankind requires those who have seen, and you become such a witness. You affirm, even without speaking, that survival is achievable, that shadow can be withstood, that the spirit can be reshaped. You may observe that after such a shift, your very view of life changes. What once felt permanent now shows itself as disguise and symbol. You perceive more plainly the roles people perform, the faces they put on, the projections they throw. You may at moments feel separate, for once you have seen behind the veil, it is hard to pretend. Yet this separation is also a present. It frees you from deceptions that once held you. You are no longer so readily captivated by praise, nor tricked by charm, nor caught by shame. You stand apart from the mass trance. This can be isolating, true, but it is also the start of actual liberty. For liberty is not the lack of restraints only. It is the presence of consciousness. I must stress again, do not hate what you have undergone, for though it was brutal, though it almost ruined you, it has also awakened in you abilities that could not have been formed otherwise. The narcissist, in their endless need, acted as the tool that hammered the metal of your soul. It was painful. It left marks, but it also forged you. Now you are a container not of weakness, but of resilience. Your empathy has not vanished. It has become richer. You feel still, but you feel with awareness, open. You love still, but you love with clarity. You give still, but you no longer mix up giving with vanishing. This is the magic of survival. There will be times, I know, when you grieve for the self you used to be. You may long for the simplicity, the unprotected honesty, the clear faith. But simplicity is not the ultimate goal. Completeness is not pure brightness, but the merging of brightness and shadow. The empath who has survived holds both within them. They are no longer saint nor prey. They are a complete human being, powerful and gentle, bright and marked. They walk the world as a living contradiction. And in this contradiction rests the key of true individuation. So I say to you now, you are not merely survivors. You are those who have been initiated. You have passed through a test that left you exposed. And what remains is not less than before, but more. Do not reduce yourself by declaring, I am damaged. Instead declare, I have been reformed. Do not hold on to resentment, though resentment is alluring. for it will turn your injury into rock. Instead, treat your injury as holy as the location where something greater entered you. For it is in our injuries, not our flawless parts, that the soul shows its genuine face. And you, empath, who has survived, carry that showing within you. When the empath rises from the ashes of survival, there comes a peculiar quiet. It is the quiet after the tempest, when the noise has ended, when the downpour has ceased and the ground still shudders with a memory of the fury. Many confuse this quiet for void, for absence of feeling. But it is not a void. It is the psyche recalibrating, making itself ready for a new direction. In that quiet, you may feel adrift, stripped of the old self that once discovered meaning in helping, in fixing, in being the container of another's unvoiced want. You may ask yourself, who am I now, if not the one who saves, if not the one who endures? This question is the commencement of the more profound voyage. For to lose the old response is not to be empty, but to be receptive. The unconscious has hollowed out room inside you, and it waits for a new vision to form. A vision not commanded by the narcissist, nor by the habits of your past, but by the self itself. That symbol of completeness that has been leading you through the darkness the entire time. Do you see then how essential the collapse was? Without it, you would still be revolving in deceptions, still mistaking giving up for love, still mixing up empathy with fate. The narcissist's shadow forced you into the furnace where untruths could no longer live. And now in this quiet, the self murmurs. It does not yell. It arrives in visions, in signs, in sudden knowings that appear to come from nowhere. Perhaps you dream of moving through a destroyed place only to find a lone plant growing between the cracks. Perhaps you dream of a young one handing you a tool, though you do not know what it opens. Perhaps you find yourself pulled to being alone, to the wild, to the peaceful places where your own spirit becomes your guide. All of these are indications that the psyche is reforming, that the empath is no longer merely a receiver of others, but a hunter of their own inner reality. It is here that the archetype of the hero appears. You may not consider yourself a hero, for your history was not one of victory, but of perseverance. Yet perseverance itself is heroic. To survive when another has consumed your light, to keep living when your essence has been tainted, this is a type of heroism as meaningful as any conflict. But unlike the hero of stories who defeats the monster, your monster could not be defeated. For it was inside and outside. It was in the narcissist, and it was in your own shadow. Your purpose was not to destroy, but to persist until transformation happened. And now, having persisted, you carry within you the reward that the hero always brings back from the depths. Understanding of shadow, understanding of deception, understanding of the endurance of the human heart. And like all genuine heroes, you are summoned to use this understanding not only for yourself, but for others. The hero is never reborn for their own benefit alone. They come back to the community carrying illumination, carrying cure, carrying sight. But here I must warn you, the empath who has survived is susceptible to a new lure. The lure to describe themselves only by survival. You may hold tightly to your narrative of suffering as if it were your identity, saying, "This is who I am, the one who was shattered and survived." But identity constructed only on survival is still not whole. You must move past survival into evolving. Survival is the beginning, evolving is the fulfillment. If you halt at survival, you risk becoming hardened, forever revolving around your injury. If you step into evolving, you let the injury be changed into power, into empathy, into sight. The narcissist wished to shrink you to an image of their own void. Survival guaranteed that did not occur. Now you must guarantee that survival itself does not become a cage. Do not just survive, evolve. What does this evolving look like? It may not be huge or sensational. It may be as plain as stating a truth where once you were mute. It may be as deep as refusing, where once you could only agree. It may be as slight as detecting control in a word and declining to be pulled into it. But each action of realness, each instant of self-honor, each choice to stay aware, these are the signs of your evolving. Over time, these small actions knit together into a fabric of change. You become a person who no longer abandons themselves for the sake of calm. You become one who can love without melting, who can feel without being overwhelmed, who can give without fading. You become finally a spirit that owns itself. The unconscious loves contradiction. And so it is with you. Having absorbed shadow, you now emit a light that is not the same as before. It is not the untested light of the unmarked empath, but the refined light of one who knows shadow. Before your light was gentle, spread out, readily absorbed by those who sought to use it. Now your light is more focused, more distinct, a light that can reveal deceptions without being dimmed by them. Others may sense it as both solace and test, for your being unconsciously calls for authenticity. Those who wish to stay unaware may oppose you, but those who yearn for reality will be attracted to you. This is part of your fate. For the empath who has survived carries not only their own change, but the chance of rousing others. Imagine now another dream. A person dreams she's holding a weighty bag full of rocks. She fights to move, barely able to advance. Finally, she falls, and the bag opens, and the rocks spread over the earth. But as she looks carefully, she sees that some of the rocks are gems sparkling in the starlight. She understands she has been holding treasure the whole time, though she believed it was only a load. This is the reality of your survival. You thought you were only carrying hurt, humiliation, to blame. But concealed within these were gems, fortitude, perception, depth, knowledge. Now that the bag has opened, you see what was there all along. The job is to claim the gems, to shine them, to wear them as emblems of what you have endured. Do not discard them in anger, for they are the presents hidden in the load. The deeper truth is this: who you become after taking in the narcissist shadow is no longer just an empath. You become a seer of a kind, one who looks past the obvious. You have cultivated an extra sense for untruth, awareness not only to feelings but to symbols in motion. You can sense the shadow moving in people, the disguise changing, the projection landing. This is not suspicion but insight. It is what occurs when one has existed among disguises and has learned to tell the difference between the fake and the genuine. This ability is risky, for it sets you apart, but it is also sacred, for it lets you be of service. You become a beacon for others who are still trapped, not by talking at them, not by pushing, but simply by living the truth that survival and change are possible. Yet I must tell you something more. The narcissist is not only an external character, it is also an inner symbol. You survived the narcissist outside, but the task now is to meet the narcissist within. For every one of us holds inside us the attraction to exaggerate, to reject our own shadow, to feed on others for the sake of the ego's appetite. If you do not meet this inner narcissist, then you risk turning into what you once hated. Survival alone does not stop this. Only integration does when you acknowledge the narcissist within you, the part that desires to be adored, that dreads exposure, that tries to command. Then you are truly liberated. For liberty is not the absence of external oppressors. It is the control of internal forces. The empath who becomes complete is one who has witnessed both the empathic child within and the narcissistic shadow within, and has joined them in the self's acceptance. This is why I talk of individuation. For individuation is the bringing together of opposites. You are no longer only the sensitive child who soaks up, nor the toughened survivor who fights, but the integrated being who contains both. You can be powerful and kind, perceptive and caring, strong and soft. You do not cling to one label, but permit the totality of your soul to unfold. And in this totality, you discover liberty. For liberty is not the ability to command others as the narcissist thinks, but the ability to be yourself without dread, without deception, without reliance on disguises. This is what you are becoming, step by step, vision by vision, action by action. So, when you ask, who am I now after all this? The answer cannot be given in one term. You are not only empath, not only survivor, not only wounded healer. You are all of these and more. You are the contradiction, the enigma, the living emblem of what it means to hold shadow and still shine. You are the reminder that the spirit cannot be eliminated, that even when tainted, it can transform the toxin into a remedy. You are the phoenix, the Persephone, the hero, the magician. You are the one who has walked through an end and found existence on the other side. And now we reach the peak, the place where the journey of survival, of descent and return, shows its ultimate significance. You have asked, who does the empath become after absorbing the narcissist's shadow and surviving? We have followed the phases of death and rebirth, of shadow and magic, of quiet and awakening. But the final reality cannot be conveyed only in psychological words. It must be spoken in the dialect of the soul. For what has happened is not merely mending, it is initiation. The empath who has survived has stepped over the line into a new state of being, one that carries both the scent of the eternal and the reality of human limitation. To explain this is hard, for words stumble before the unknown. Yet we must attempt, for the psyche needs expression of what it has endured, lest it stay unspoken within. When you survive the narcissist, you have encountered harm. Not harm as a theory, but harm as personal experience. You have seen how the mask can consume, how charisma can hide meanness, how care can be bent into a tool. You have felt the emptiness that lives in those who deny their shadow, the vacuum behind their gaze. To face this and not fall is a monumental feat. It is to gaze into the core of the collective shadow. For the narcissist is not only a person, but a sign of what culture itself suppresses, the craving for control, the fear of being open, the denial of truth. To survive them is to hold within yourself a fragment of collective labor. You have looked into what most would rather ignore, and in looking you have become a holder of knowing. This knowing cannot be erased, nor should it be. It is the base of your transformation. But transformation is not the finish. Integration is to integrate, means to weave the darkness you have faced into the cloth of your being, not as toxin, but as insight. You no longer say, that was not me. Instead you say, it affected me, but it did not name me. It wounded me, but it also stamped me with significance. This is why your wounds are important. They are not errors to be removed, but markings carved by the unconscious. They tell you that you have traveled the road of descent, and that you hold the authority of having lived it. Authority not in the sense of control over others, but in the sense of being genuine. Others may dispute your thoughts, but they cannot dispute your existence. You embody survival, and that embodiment itself is proof. Here rests the paradox of your destiny. You are no longer merely empath, for empathy in its simple form has ended. You are no longer merely survivor, for survival by itself is not enough. You have become something more complex, more potent, more perilous, more sacred. You are the wounded healer, but also the shadow recognize, the one who has walked both light and darkness. You are a sign that humanity cannot be split into sufferers and abusers, light and shadow, virtue and harm. You know now that all live within the psyche. You have met them in others, and you have met them in yourself. And because you know this, you can no longer be fooled by surfaces. You see beneath disguises. You see the symbols moving behind countenances. You feel the flows of shadow and light moving through talks, connections, cultures. This sight is both present and wait for. It divides you from the deceptions that maintain the crowd, but it also gives you liberty for truth. Though it sets apart, it always frees. At this stage you may feel disconnected. You may move through the world and observe what others miss. You may note how readily people fall under the influence of charm, how they idolize pictures, how they give up their spirits to fantasies. And you may feel tired, for you cannot go back to that unknowing. Yet I tell you, do not lose hope, for your disconnection is also your calling. You are not asked to fit into the old molds, but to show new paths. You are a seed of individuation in a collective that prefers sameness. You are a murmur of authenticity in a chant of disguises. You may not be grasped by many, but you will be known by those who are prepared. And when they know you, they will see in your marks the guide of their own survival. Let's return then to the language of visions. Imagine a person dreaming. He is standing on the edge of a great sea at night. The waves beat fiercely, and he feels scared, for he knows he could be taken. But then he sees that the water shines softly as if lit from below. He steps into the ocean, expecting to sink, but instead he is buoyant, carried not by terror, but by illumination. He awakens and cries, knowing that the very thing he feared sinking into has become the very thing that holds him. This is the heart of your transformation. What once menaced to erase you has become the medium that supports you. The narcissist shadow, however damaging, forced you into the sea of the unconscious, and there you found that you could be buoyant, not because you were powerful, but because the self was holding you all along. Survival showed you that the psyche is vaster than any individual wound, that the soul holds depths you had not imagined. And so who have you become? You have become one who trusts the depths. You no longer fear darkness, for you know it is where the beginnings of light are buried. You no longer fear suffering, for you know it is the workshop of purpose. You no longer fear disloyalty, for you know that even disloyalty cannot erase the soul's ability to be remade. You live now with a different tempo, a different pull. You do not hurry to repair, to recover, to melt into others. You stand firm in yourself, and from that firmness you offer compassion. It is not the driven compassion of the old empath, but the constant compassion of the awakened soul. You give not because you have to, but because you elect to. And in electing, you are free. This freedom is the result of individuation. It is the freedom to be yourself without disguise, without act, without the need to satisfy or to save. It is the freedom to welcome your shadow, to acknowledge your fury, your dread, your need, and still know you are complete. It is the freedom to look into the eyes of another whether they wear the mask of narcissism or the face of virtue, and to see the symbols in action without losing yourself in them. This is no minor freedom. It is the freedom for which the soul aches, the freedom that makes existence meaningful. And so, my friends, when you ask, who do I become after surviving? The answer is this: you become yourself finally, not the self described by others, not the self thrown upon you, not the self given up to deceptions, but the self that has always been waiting in the depths. You become the one who can say with honesty and with force, I am. And that I am is not pride, not narcissism, but authenticity. It is the voice of the soul coming from the quiet, announcing its presence without excuse. It is the peak of individuation, the union of shadow and light, the harmonizing of suffering and meaning, the awakening of the timeless within the fleeting. If you listen carefully, you may hear even now the voice of the self inside you. It does not praise. It does not lie. It does not control. It whispers, you are complete. You always were. Even when you believed you were in pieces, you always were. Even when you carried another's shadow, you always were. Even when you thought you would not make it, you are complete. And now you know it. And this knowing is the gift of your voyage. For to know completeness is to live no longer in dread, but in faith. Faith of yourself, faith of the psyche, faith of the mystery that supports us all. This then is the ultimate transformation. You are no longer empath, no longer victim, no longer even survivor. You are a soul awakened to its own depth, a being who carries within them both darkness and light, and who walks the earth with the authority of one who has endured. You are the answer to the question you once feared to ask. You are the one who has become. You did not break. You were being reshaped. If this resonated, please like this video and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. It truly helps the channel Wake and Win continue to create content that matters. Thank you for watching.